Hello, everyone. Tonight, we're going to sit down at a Thanksgiving table where the turkey is golden, the candles are steady, and the air smells like cinnamon and family history. But there's a message buzzing in my pocket that says, I might not walk away from this meal. I'll keep my voice low, like I'm letting you in on a secret that could change the rest of the evening. You'll hear the silverware, the polite laughter, and the moment my pulse finds a new rhythm. And here's a quick reality check. If you think everyone sitting at your holiday table has your best interest at heart, you might not survive the gravy boat making its rounds. Vì vậy, trước khi bạn cảm thấy thoải mái, hãy dành chút thời gian để thích video và đăng ký nhưng chỉ khi bạn thực sự thích những gì tôi làm ở đây. Let me know where you're listening from and what time it is right now in your part of the world.
Bây giờ hãy tắt đèn, có thể bắt quạt để có tiếng ồn nhẹ nhàng và chúng ta hãy cùng nhau bắt đầu hành trình tối nay. Grant's dining room was bigger than my first apartment. The kind of space where light from the chandelier hits polished silver and makes you feel like you should be on your best behavior. Valerie. My daughter-in-law had arranged the table like a magazine spread, matching chargers, cloth napkins folded into perfect little pockets for the cutlery, tiny name cards at each seat. Mine had a sprig of rosemary tied with twine. She's nothing if not thorough. We just sat down, the opening chorus of polite conversation warming up, when my phone on vibrate buzzed once in my pocket. I don't check my phone at the table. Manners drilled into me decades ago. But the buzz came again and again. Something about the persistence made me slip it under the edge of the tablecloth. The message glowed on the screen, don't eat anything. Trust me. No name, no emoji, just that. I blinked, read it twice, and felt the kind of cold that has nothing to do with the weather slide down my spine. Old age wisdom messages like that don't come by accident, and if you don't recognize the sender, it's either a scam or the most important thing you'll hear all day. I looked up, scanning faces. Grant was pouring wine for Valerie's parents, leaning in to make a joke with her father. Valerie herself was arranging the serving dishes, her smile sharp enough to slice pie. She moved with the ease of someone who's rehearsed the scene. The turkey came first, moist, perfectly carved. Then mashed potatoes, cranberry sauce, roasted vegetables. The plates moved clockwise, and when they landed in front of me, they looked like every other year's feast, except I noticed Valerie's hand linger just a second longer on my plate before she passed it down. I forced a smile, reached for the bread basket instead. Quirky fact, passing bread is the safest move at a table. You can stall 3 whole minutes with butter and small talk. Joke, one bread diplomacy is underrated. While everyone else dug in, I let my fork hover. My eyes kept flicking toward Valerie. She was watching her mother's plate, then mine, then back again like she was tracking inventory. I decided to test the waters. During a toast to family we can count on, I shifted my plate toward Valerie's mother, Maeve, and slid hers in front of me, making it look like a playful mistake. Here, Maeve, you've got the bigger slice of turkey you'll need that energy for dessert, I said. Laughter, a quick exchange of plates, and no one questioned it. Within minutes, the room's soundtrack changed. Maeve's face went pale, her hand shaking as she set down her fork. She murmured something to Valerie, who half rose from her chair before Maeve swayed. Grant caught her just as she slumped sideways. Chaos! Valerie shouting for someone to call 911. Grant easing Maeve to the floor, Valerie's father wringing his hands. I sat still, my hands folded in my lap, eyes fixed on the untouched plate now in front of me. The paramedics arrived in under 10 minutes, their calm movements a strange contrast to the panic in the room. Maeve was conscious again by the time they wheeled her out, Valerie glued to her side, murmuring reassurances. Dinner fizzled after that. People picked at their plates, murmured about stress, and skipped lunches, speculated about blood sugar. I excused myself early, claiming fatigue, my phone heavy in my pocket. Whoever sent that message hadn't followed up. Back in my car, the quiet felt almost too big. I pulled into my driveway, killed the engine, and sat in the dark for a moment. Then my phone buzzed again. Same number. Meet me at the park by the old fountain, tonight. Academic debate phrase popped into my head, burden of proof. If I went, I might get answers. If I didn't, I'd be left with questions I couldn't afford to ignore. I locked the car, grabbed my coat, and told myself I was just going for a walk. Sometimes you follow the thread, even if you're not sure what's at the other end. The park looked like a postcard that had been left out in the dew lamplight, beating on benches, the path glossed with last week's leaves, the old fountain talking to itself in a tired, pretty hush. I pulled my coat tighter and waited, phone in my palm like a small, warm animal. 10 minutes, then a text, not safe to meet. Watch first. Take nothing from her. Trust patterns, not apologies. The message slid across the screen with the confidence of someone who had already decided the evening for me. Old age wisdom tapped my shoulder. Before you step forward, look down. If the ground is soft, wait for it to firm up. So I did what the message said. I watched first the park, then in my mind the last 6 months unspooling like ribbon. I thought about Valerie's hospitality, how it always arrived with a side of insistence. Eat more. Take seconds. Let me plate that for you, Marlene. The way the serving spoon would pause over my plate, as if asking permission, but not really waiting for the answer. I used to call it being well cared for. Tonight, the phrase tasted like a splinter. Back home, the house felt like it had rearranged itself while I was out. I set my purse on the entry table and took the long route to the kitchen. Fingers brushing the backs of chairs I'd sat in as a young mother, then as the mother of a young man in love, then as the mother-in-law who became a thank you speech. The refrigerator's light was too bright. I stood in it anyway and really looked at the labeled containers Valerie prepped for me, the tidy line of plastic-wrapped portions with dates in a handwriting that never smudged. Quirky tidbit permanent marker on cold plastic always looks more decisive than it actually is. Joke 1 office supplies are tyrants. On the counter sat the pie she'd sent me home with because Mom shouldn't bake on a holiday. I slid it into the freezer beside a bag of peas and a half-finished pint of mint chip, the domestic archive of a person who lives mostly alone. Then I took out a small notepad and wrote at the top, signals and suspicions. The neatness almost made me laugh. If you've ever tried to organize chaos, stationery helps. Not much, but some. First line, food that only I am urged to eat. Second, Valerie plating for me, insisting, hovering. Third, doctor visits that materialize when she has a slot for me. Fourth, medications. I didn't ask for, can't pronounce, but somehow must take with dinner. Academic debate phrase for the moment. Bayesian priors, what you already believe adjusts how you read new evidence. I'd believed in Valerie's care. Everything else bent to fit. Tonight shifted the prior, and suddenly old scenes made new shapes. I poured tea because water plus heat equals courage you can sip. As it steeped, I called up quiet memories I'd filed under odd but sweet, how Valerie would bring me trial recipes when I had a cold. How she'd scold me gently about hydration while pressing a glass of something cloudy into my hand. How she'd help me refill my pill sorter when I said my eyes were tired. Grant had praised her for the help, and I'd nodded because help is polite, and who argues with that? Joke 2 politeness is the duct tape of dysfunctional families.
My phone buzzed again. If she offers to take you to appointments, say no. Pick your own. change pharmacies, rotate patterns. The thoroughness made my skin prickle with both relief and alarm. Whoever this was, they knew the choreography.
I slept badly, dreams like thin ice cracking under the weight of facts I hadn't yet agreed to carry. At dawn, I sat at the dining table with my notepad and the morning light, which is kinder than the truth, but not as useful. I added dates. September, the slow appetite. October, the night sweats, the dizziness. November, holiday stress. Valerie's diagnosis, not my doctor's. I underlined it. I had let the loudest voice in the room become the most trusted. Old age wisdom, revised convenience is not love, even when it comes with matching napkins. By mid-morning, I was dressed and out the door, headed not to my usual clinic, but to a walk-in down the hill where the receptionist has a laugh that sounds like a screen door in summer. I asked for a copy of my last year's visit summaries, just summaries, nothing fancy, and waited while the printer chattered away behind the counter. The stack they handed over was thinner than it should have been. Missing appointments, I remembered present ones I didn't. I circled the gaps. Patterns make themselves known when you give them a pen. On the way home, I stopped at a different pharmacy, the small one with the bell that dings without apology, and asked them to transfer my prescriptions. The tech with blue glasses pushed a form across the counter and said, "Happy to like it was nothing like my life wasn't changing tone by tone." She looked at my list and frowned. "You sure about all of these?" she asked, pointing to one with a name that sounded like a sneeze. I told her, "I'm seeing a new doctor," which was true in intent, if not yet in appointment. Back in my kitchen, I did something ridiculously practical. I cleaned a drawer, not a metaphorical drawer, a real one, the junk drawer, with the rubber bands that have given up the takeout menus from restaurants that went out of business during the winter of soup. I made room for a new plastic bin and labeled it Notes and Labels, because labels keep me from telling future me I'll remember. Joke 3, future me is a liar. She takes messages and never calls back. Into the bin went the napkins from last night, folded around the smallest smuggled bites of stuffing and beans. The Sharpie labeled each date and source. At noon, Grant called. "How are you?" "Any word from Maeve?" I asked back. He exhaled. "Stable. They think it was blood sugar, stress." His voice sounded like a man auditioning to be calm. "You left so fast, Mom." "So did the ambulance," I said, keeping my tone, the temperature of room temp water, polite, unremarkable. He asked if I'd eaten. I said I had toast. He approved like a parent. When the call ended, I added another line to my list. Grant repeats Valerie's words. Check where hers stop and his begin. The rest of the day, I spent in observation of myself. One thing about getting older is that your body sends memos in triplicate. I read them. Did the fog lift if no one fed me? Were my hands steady? If my tea was plain? Could I go 3 hours without a nap? If I wasn't reminded to take a pill? The answers were not dramatic. They were steady. Steady is better than dramatic when you're deciding who to be next. Late afternoon, I walked the block. Leaves scuffed my shoes, a sound I've loved since childhood because it makes even grown-ups feel allowed to play. The neighbor's beagle announced me like I was news. On the corner, Mrs. Alvarez waved me over to admire her chrysanthemums, and I stood there talking about nothing important for 7 minutes just to measure whether my mind could hold small talk without dropping a thread. It could. I counted backward by sevens in my head as she described fertilizer, and when I got to negative numbers, I laughed at myself for showing off to no one. Back home, the fountain pen I keep for real decisions felt right in my hand, so I opened a fresh page. House rules for me. 1. I don't eat anything I didn't cook or watch being prepared. 2. I schedule my own appointments. 3.
I carry water I poured. 4. If I can't explain a pill, I don't swallow it. This wasn't paranoia. It was procedure. Ask any pilot checklist, save lives.
Evening slid in. The house did its little creaks. The kettle did its soft song. I stared at the freezer for a long moment before adding a roll of masking tape and a pair of scissors to the notes and labels bin. Tiny upgrades for a vigil that didn't announce itself as such. I texted the unknown number I'm watching. I changed the pharmacy. I'll hold off on meeting until I have more. Whoever you are, thank you. A dot appeared, disappeared then. Good. Patterns will tell you everything. I'll be in touch. Before bed, I stood at the bathroom mirror and said my name out loud, first and last, like introducing myself to someone whose company I meant to keep. Then I turned off the light and let the dark be just dark, not a warning. Tomorrow I'd expand the list. Tomorrow I'd call a new doctor and ask for tests that didn't begin with anyone else's opinion of me. Tonight I kept company with a notebook, a freezer, and a truth that had learned to speak in full sentences. Trust is a door. You get to keep the key. Thursday's morning light came in low and slanted, the kind that catches on dust motes and makes you remember to breathe slower. I made oatmeal on the stove instead of toast, mostly because it gave me more time to think while stirring. Old age wisdom. If you want to sort your mind, give your hands something steady to do. The unknown number hadn't texted again, but its silence felt like an open book I hadn't finished. I decided that if I couldn't meet the messenger yet, I could at least start collecting my own chapters. I pulled the plastic bin labeled Notes and Labels from the drawer, set it on the table, and laid out the napkin samples I'd taken from Thanksgiving. Then I added the printed summaries from the walk-in clinic, a copy of my pharmacy transfer form, and a new spiral notebook labeled Timeline.
First entry, 9/23 Thanksgiving. Text warning. Don't eat anything. Swapped plate with Maeve during toast. Maeve collapsed. Ambulance. Valerie accompanied. Unknown texter made contact later that night.
I kept writing, working backward. October's headaches, September's low energy, August's. Let me make you something light from Valerie after I'd mowed the lawn. As the list grew, a shape started to emerge, a slow tightening, not a single blow. Around 10 a.m., I called Grant. How's Maeve? She's home, he said, but there was a hesitance in his voice, like the words had to pass through gauze. They're still running tests. Stress, maybe? I'm glad she's resting, I replied, and let the pause sit long enough for him to feel it. Grant, I'd like to drop something off for you later. Some old photos for the boys. Oh, sure, Mom. His tone was neutral, but I could hear the side eye through the phone, like he was wondering why I didn't just text the pictures. I wasn't bringing photos. I was bringing presents, one of those drop-bys that lets you see who's really home. At noon, I baked a simple apple loaf. Quirky fact: cinnamon covers more conversational awkwardness than small talk ever could. Joke 1, if you can't charm them, feed them pie spice. When I arrived at their house, Valerie opened the door with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Marlene, what a surprise. Brought something for the kids, I said, holding up the loaf. She led me to the kitchen where Grant was at the island, laptop open. The boys were in the backyard shouting at each other over a football. While Valerie fetched plates, I glanced at the counter. The pill bottles were new to me, not the ones I'd seen in the past. Labels faced inward. I made a mental note of the pharmacy name, one I didn't recognize. We cut the loaf, Valerie fussing about the glaze, and Grant asked about my week. I gave polite answers, all the while clocking the small movements Valerie. Keeping my cup topped off, Grant glancing to her for cues before he spoke. Academic debate phrase flickered in my head. Informational asymmetry, when one party has more knowledge than the other and uses it. After 20 minutes, I stood to leave, sliding a small envelope across the counter toward Grant. "Some things for you to look at later," I said. Inside were 2 copies of the Thanksgiving seating chart Valerie had emailed to the family with my notes in the margins about the plate swap and Maeve's collapse. Nothing accusatory, just facts with times. Valerie's eyes followed the envelope like it was a fuse. "What's that?" she asked. "Old family notes," I said, meeting her gaze just long enough for her to wonder which family. Back home, I added to the timeline Nov 28 noted unfamiliar prescriptions at Grant's house. Pharmacy name Greystone Medical. The phone buzzed, unknown number again. "You're moving faster than I thought." "Good." "Be careful with her mom. Valerie will use her as a shield." I texted back, "Why are you helping me?" A pause then. "Because she tried this with someone I love. Didn't get the chance to finish." I set the phone down slowly, like it might spill something if I wasn't careful. My mind flashed to the only person in that house who might have a reason to defy Valerie quietly, her stepson Nico. I'd seen him at the edge of holiday photos, always half turned away. Before bed, I wrote one more line in the timeline: potential ally Nico. Watch for openings. Quirky fact in chess: the least expected piece can change the whole game. Joke 2: it's not always the queen. Sometimes it's a pawn with excellent timing. I closed the notebook, poured a small glass of water I'd filled myself, and drank it like a toast to whatever tomorrow might let me learn. Friday morning, I woke to the low, damp quiet that comes before rain. I pulled on a sweater and padded into the kitchen, making coffee the slow way Ground's kettle pour over, because slow feels like a choice when so much else is on someone else's clock. Old age wisdom ritual is the scaffolding you lean on when the building's under repair. Halfway through my first cup, the unknown number lit up my screen again. "We should talk in person. Tomorrow. Library, 2nd floor, study room, noon." No more riddles, apparently. I stared at the message, weighing the risk. Then I typed, "I'll be there." The rest of the morning, I kept busy without really remembering what I'd done laundry. A half-hearted attempt at dusting, rearranging the freezer so the pie evidence napkins were in the back under the peas. Quirky fact: frozen vegetables are the best camouflage for secrets. Joke: 1 spinach has been hiding contraband since the dawn of freezers. Around 11, I called the Greystone Medical Pharmacy I'd spotted at Grant's house, pretending to be a potential customer. "Do you carry..." And I rattled off one of the unfamiliar medication names I'd seen on the label. The tech confirmed they did. "But you'll need a prescription on file," she added. I thanked her, hung up, and wrote the interaction in my timeline. I was collecting these moments the way some people collect stamps, tiny, sticky proofs of where something's been. In the afternoon, I called Grant. "Thinking about making Sunday dinner at my place," I said casually. "It's been a while." He hesitated, then said, "Sure, I'll talk to Valerie." The fact that my own son had to check with his wife about visiting my house, well, I wrote that down too. Academic debate phrase for the day: gatekeeping behavior. Evening came with a drizzle that patterned the windows. I decided to bake another loaf, this one lemon poppy seed, partly for something to do, partly because I wanted my kitchen to smell like something I'd made myself. The batter felt different in my hands, lighter, maybe because I wasn't trying to please anyone but me. Around 8, I heard my phone buzz. It wasn't the unknown number, it was a text from Nico. "Can we talk tomorrow?" After I stared at the name, first time I'd seen it tied to this phone, and typed back yes. Saturday noon, I arrived at the library early, choosing a seat with my back to the wall. At exactly 12, Nico appeared taller than I remembered, wearing a hoodie with the hood up. He slid into the chair across from me. "I'm the one who texted you," he said without ceremony. "At Thanksgiving." I figured, I replied. "Why?" "I overheard her," he said, eyes fixed on the table. "Talking on the phone, saying you were a problem, that she needed to finish the plan before the end of the year. And she mentioned your will." That landed like a stone in my chest. "She's after the house," I said quietly. He nodded. and whatever else she thinks you have. She's been looking at your mail when it comes to the house. I've seen her. Quirky fact, in a lot of states, tampering with mail is a federal crime. Joke 2, most criminals forget that envelopes have better lawyers than people do. I asked him why he didn't go to Grant. He doesn't hear me, Nico said. He thinks I hate her because she married his dad. And I do, but that's not why I'm telling you. We talked for nearly an hour, piecing together timelines. He's overheard calls, my symptoms, the changes in my routine that lined up with Valerie's help. It was like matching constellations in the dark. Once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. Before he left, Nico handed me a small flash drive. It's from the nanny cam I set up in the kitchen, he said. You should watch it alone. I slipped it into my bag like it was a relic. Thank you, I said, meaning it. That night in my locked studio, I plugged in the drive. The first clip was grainy but clear enough, Valerie at the counter mixing something into a sauce, then looking over her shoulder before ladling it into a single small container, one I recognized. My container. I sat back, the weight of the proof pressing on my chest. I didn't feel fear exactly. More like the way you feel when you've been bracing against a storm and finally see the first drop hit, confirmation cold and undeniable. I labeled the file, saved 3 backups, and slid 1 copy into the notes and labels bin. Tomorrow, I'd figure out how to use it. Tonight, I made tea and drank it slow, the taste cleaned my hands steady. I didn't sleep so much as idle, like an engine that refuses to stall because it knows the light will turn green eventually. By morning, I had a list and a thermos. Old age wisdom struck right between sips. When shock wears off, do the small lawful things first. They stack up like bricks. The wall builds itself while your hands are busy. Brick 1, make copies. I duplicated the nanny cam files onto 2 fresh USBs, labeled all 3 with date time, and a short description in block letters, no poetry, just nouns. Brick 2, a written log. I opened my timeline notebook and added what lawyers call contemporaneous notes, exactly what I saw, exactly when I saved it, exactly where each copy now lived. Academic debate, phrase for the hour chain of custody. People think it's only for TV dramas. Really, it's for anyone who wants the truth to stand up without wobbling. Brick 3, samples. I pulled the napkins out of the freezer, the ones I'd used to smuggle bites home from Thanksgiving, and slid them into quart-sized bags, squeezing out the air like regret. Next, I opened the container Valerie had dropped off so you don't have to cook Marlene a chicken and rice concoction that smelled overly lemony, which is the culinary equivalent of whistling in a hallway. I spooned out a portion into a clean jar and labeled it too. Quirky fact, thermal paper receipts fade faster in heat, so if you're saving them, don't tape them to anything warm. Joke 1, ask me how I know. My toaster has opinions. I called Arthur Hale, my old friend who knows his way around documents and people who don't like them, and asked if he had a reliable lab contact for water quality or something more flavorful, he asked dryly. Food, I said. Possibly adulterated. He gave me a name, a private lab that handles allergen testing and the occasional ugly divorce, and told me to ask for Renee. Tell her I said your samples are Sunday school clean, he said, and drive them over yourself, cold. I packed a small cooler with ice packs slid in the jar and the bag napkins and drove with both hands on the wheel because there are days you don't trust anyone, including your own elbows. Renee met me at a side door with the kind of efficiency that makes you want to iron your personality. We'll run a broad screen, she said, snapping on gloves. If it's common, we'll see it. If it's rare, we'll know where to send it. Timeline matters, I said, handing her my typed log. Then you're already my favorite client, she replied, scrawling my case number on everything that could hold ink. She promised preliminary results in 48 hours and handed me a printed receipt that looked so official I felt steadier just holding it. Back home, I turned to Brick 4 money. Motive doesn't need to be elegant, it just needs to balance someone else's ledger. I dug out the stack of mail Valerie had helpfully gathered for me over the last months, refiled by me, when my stomach started to itch about control. I wasn't looking for a smoking gun, just smoke. Insurance mailers with her notes in the margins. A flyer for a senior estate planning seminar circled in green. 2 glossy envelopes addressed to me but creased like someone with French manicure curiosity had peeked. I photographed each item in place on my table, then again on a plain background date stamped. Documentation is not drama, it's housekeeping. Then the pantry. I worked shelf by shelf, making a list of anything I hadn't bought. Like I was playing a supermarket version of one of these things is not like the others. There were 2 vitamin bottles with labels I didn't recognize, same brand as the pill at Grant's house, with the sneeze for a name, and a little brown dropper bottle tucked behind the honey. I did not open it. I did not sniff. I photographed it where it sat and slid it into a zip bag with a note, found 10:42 a.m., left sealed. Joke 2, CSI Pantry does not have a theme song, but it should. Midday I boiled pasta, the kind that goes al dente if you so much as look hopeful at it, and kept my food plain on purpose. As I ate, I texted Nico, got the file secured. Thank you. Are you safe? He replied. Yes. With my mom today. Don't tell Grant yet. He needs the whole picture or he'll default to her story. He wasn't wrong. Grant's first language is optimism. It reads every headline like a misunderstanding. After lunch, I drove to a copy shop where the clerk has a tattoo of a fountain pen and the heart of a notary. I printed still frames from the video Valerie pouring, checking the doorway, decanting into the single small container. I printed my logs, the lab intake receipt, and a brief cover note to myself. 2 sentences that said what I intended to do with this packet, show it to Grant in private, offer him the next right step, then, if he wouldn't take it, walk it to the police with or without him. I slid everything into a plain folder labeled Monday because bland names travel better. By late afternoon, the house sounded like itself would, expanding, a delivery truck sighing at the curb, a neighbor's radio playing a song that thinks it's older than it is. I sat with tea I brewed and water I poured and practiced what I would say to my son. Not the angry version. Anger is loud and blurry. The one I'd mean the morning after. I love you. I'm afraid. I have evidence. I need you to look at it without her voice in your ear. Then I need you to choose the living kind of loyalty. At 5, my phone chimed. Renee again, fast as weather. I can't give you a full report yet, she said, but I can tell you the Thanksgiving napkins weren't just butter. There's a strong hit for a compound often used in, let's call it pharmaceutical mischief. Not lethal at the amount present, but enough to cause acute symptoms. Her tone didn't moralize, it measured. We'll confirm. Don't eat anything you didn't make. I won't, I said and meant it down to my bones. I walked then. The kind where you don't bring a podcast or a worry you can't carry. I counted porch pumpkins still hanging on after the holiday and a teenager practicing parallel parking like a negotiator. The sky was the stubborn blue that makes you forgive November for being itself. By the time I looped back, my thoughts had sorted themselves into 3 little baskets: facts, next steps, and what to forgive later. Evening was for one last brick the calendar. I texted Grant, "Can you come by tomorrow morning?" Just you. 10 minutes. Important. A minute later, sure. 9, I said yes. Then set the folder on the whole table where I couldn't forget it if the house were on fire. I washed the day off my hands, the kind antiseptic way, and set a kettle for chamomile, because that's the tea you choose when you're trying not to dramatize your own kitchen. While it steeped, I drafted a short list for after I spoke to him. If he's ready, call Arthur, set a time with a detective. Bring Nico and the lab findings. If he isn't, go without him. Love is not an alibi. Either way, change my locks, call my new doctor, share a copy with a friend who can say, keep going when I get tired. I added one more line and underlined it. Eat before you talk. People faint less when they've had protein. Joke 3 nurses' advice via the School of Hard Knocks. Before bed, I stood at the kitchen window and watched my reflection become the night outside. The refrigerator hummed its modest hymn. I thought about Tables, the holiday one, where a lie was plated as hospitality. This small one where a folder of facts now sat like a place setting for courage. And the table I'd set again soon on a Sunday with soup and bread and my own hand passing the salt. If Thanksgiving had been a trap, then Saturday could be a hinge. Doors sound different when they're about to open. I turned off the light and let the dark wrap itself around the room like a shawl someone knit to be useful. Tomorrow I'd ask my son to hear me without flinching. And if he couldn't, I'd go where truth doesn't require permission. My name is Marlene. I'm still here. And I keep the key. Grant arrived right on time, which told me 2 things. He was taking my text seriously, and Valerie didn't know he was here. I'd made coffee and eggs, the kind of breakfast that looks casual but smells like a welcome. Old age wisdom: feed people before you give them hard truths. Protein softens the landing. He sat at the kitchen table, glancing toward the door, as if expecting someone to burst in. So, what's going on, Mom? I slid the plain folder toward him. Everything in here is dated, labeled, and backed up. I need you to look at it without saying anything for 10 minutes. Just read. He opened it the way you'd open a test you're not sure you studied for. The still images from the nanny cam were first. His eyes flicked to mine, then back to the page. The lab intake receipt came next, then the log entries, then the Greystone Pharmacy notes. He didn't speak. His breathing changed. When he reached the last page, he closed the folder and put his hands flat on it. Is this what I think it is? Yes, I said. And I'm sorry you have to see it like this. He leaned back, running a hand through his hair. I don't, Mom, she wouldn't. He stopped himself, shook his head. Why? Motive's in there too, I said quietly. Your name's on my will. So is hers. His jaw tightened. You're saying she's... I'm saying I've been sick in ways I couldn't explain until now. And I'm saying Maeve's collapse wasn't just bad luck. He stood up, paced once, then dropped back into the chair. This is a lot. I know, I said. But you get to decide what happens next. Academic debate phrase for the moment. Agency in crisis. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, what do you want me to do? I want you to take this to the police with me. Today. And I want you to tell Nico you believe him. His head came up at that. Nico. Yes, I said. He's the one who warned me. He's been watching out for both of us. Grant stared at the folder again, then nodded slowly. Okay, let me get my keys. We drove separately, part optics, part insurance. At the precinct, I asked for Detective Morales, a contact Arthur had recommended. She ushered us into a small interview room and closed the door. I laid the folder on the table. This is everything I've collected. Dates, samples, video. Morales flipped through it with the kind of attention that makes you feel like each page is a chess move. You've done more work than most complainants, she said. I can open an investigation today. But if we move, things will escalate fast. Grant said, do it. His voice was steady. By the time we left, Morales had a warrant request in motion and an evidence pickup scheduled for the pantry items and frozen samples still at my house. Quirky fact, an official evidence seal is just a heavy-duty sticker, but once it's on your bag, it feels like armor. Joke 1, stationery really can save your life. Back at my place, Grant lingered in the kitchen. I need to talk to the boys before they hear anything from her, he said. Bring them here, I told him. Let them see this is my house, and it's still safe. That afternoon, Nico and his younger brother showed up. We sat on the couch, hot chocolate in their hands, the air smelling faintly of cinnamon from the loaf I'd baked earlier. I'm sorry I didn't say something sooner, Nico said, not meeting my eyes. You said it at the right time, I told him. And you said it in a way that kept us both here to talk about it. Later, when they'd gone, I stood at the window watching the street. Grant's car pulled away toward his place, and I wondered how long his place would include her. Academic debate phrase floated through my head, irreversible thresholds. Once you see what's been done, you can't unsee it. Evening brought a text from Detective Morales, warrant signed. Search tomorrow morning. I replied, I'll have the house ready. Then I sat down with my timeline notebook and drew a line across the page. Above it, the before. Below it, what comes next. Quirky fact, nothing changes how you see a story like deciding where the chapter break goes. Joke 2, it's the closest life gets to editing. Before bed, I put the kettle on and let the kitchen stay lit a little longer than usual. It felt like a watch light. Tomorrow, the real turning of the key would begin. Detective Morales arrived just after 8 the next morning, 2 uniformed officers with her and a warrant folder tucked under her arm. The air outside had that brittle cold that makes sound carry farther, so every step up my walkway seemed amplified. Old age wisdom. If you've done nothing wrong, a knock at the door is a starting pistol, not a threat. Inside, I walked them straight to the pantry fridge and freezer. Morales donned gloves, nodding at my labeled bags and jars. You've made this easy, she said. The officers photographed each item in place before sealing them in evidence bags with those thick stickers that look like they could hold back a hurricane. Quirky fact, the adhesive on those seals is tamper-proof, but smells faintly of citrus, small mercies for long days. Joke 1, crime scene or not, I'll take lemon over bleach anytime. While they worked, I led Morales to the dining table, where the still frames from the nanny cam lay in a neat stack. She studied each one, her expression flat, but her eyes sharpening. This is enough for probable cause, she said. We'll serve the second warrant at your son's house this afternoon. Grant knows, I replied. He'll cooperate. By noon, the evidence was packed, chain of custody form signed, and my kitchen felt strangely lighter, like the house itself had exhaled. Morales promised to update me by evening. I spent the afternoon making soup, not because I was hungry, but because chopping vegetables felt like reclaiming the space where trust had been chipped away. Academic debate phrase for the mood restorative function. Around 4, my phone rang. Morales again. We found multiple items at the other address. Same compound Renee flagged hidden in labeled spice jars and supplement bottles. We also recovered printed pages from your will and some bank statements. Where was she? I asked. In the house, Morales said. She's in custody now. I set the knife down carefully. Is Maeve safe? She's with her husband, Morales confirmed. We'll be interviewing her. Not long after Grant called. His voice was tight, but there was no wobble in it. It's over, Mom. I'm sorry for all of it. You don't owe me an apology for her choices, I said. You only owe yourself the truth. That evening, Nico stopped by alone. They took her away, he said, almost disbelieving. Dad's quiet. I think he's in shock. We sat at the kitchen table with bowls of soup, the steam clouding the space between us. You did the right thing, I told him, and you're not alone in it. Quirky fact, lentil soup tastes better when eaten with someone who's just stepped out from under a shadow. Joke 2, probably true for most legumes. Before bed, I wrote in my timeline Deck 2 pantry and freezer evidence collected. Second warrant executed. Valerie arrested. Items found match lab results. Nico safe. Grant aware. Then I drew another line on the page, marking it not just as the end of a chapter, but the start of something I could choose the title for. Tomorrow, I'd call Arthur to discuss next steps, protective orders, will revisions, and how to keep the locks literal and otherwise in my own hands. Tonight, I let the house be still soup pot cooling on the stove keys where I could see them and the quiet not asking for anything but sleep. Sunday morning came without an alarm, but I woke early anyway, my body still tuned to the week's urgency. For the first time in months, though, the urgency didn't feel like a threat. It felt like momentum, old age wisdom. When the crisis is over, your hands still reach for the rope even after the boat's tide. I made coffee and stood at the window watching the street. Grant's SUV pulled up at 9 sharp. He came in alone, a little older in the face than he'd been 2 days ago. "The boys are with Maeve's sister," he said by way of hello. We sat in the living room, my timeline notebook open between us. "The DA's office will take it from here," I told him. "But there are other things we should talk about." He nodded, bracing himself. "First, I said you'll need to get your name off anything that's tied to her financially joint accounts, credit cards, even utilities. She'll try to reach for those while she can." "I already closed the cards yesterday," he said. "Bank accounts are next." I marked that down. Academic debate phrase for the day: asset isolation. "Second, I went on you and the boys need a safe place. I know you're staying at Maeve's sister's for now, but we can look at rentals together if you want." He hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, I think that's smart." We talked for an hour, mapping out steps like a pair of architects who both knew the old foundation wasn't worth saving. After he left, I called Arthur. "Time to update the will," I said. "And I want a clause in there about disinheritance if anyone's convicted of causing harm to me." Arthur chuckled, not unkindly. "It's grim, but it's airtight. Come by Tuesday." Quirky fact: in legal documents the words "whereas and heretofore have been holding the same jobs for centuries." Joke one, they're basically the tenured professors of paperwork. By afternoon, I found myself cooking again, not just a loaf this time, but a whole meal. Roast, chicken, potatoes, carrots. I set the table for 3. At 4, Nico arrived with his younger brother, both of them carrying that uncertain energy kids get when the adults have been whispering too much. "Hungry?" I asked. They nodded, and soon the sound of plates and forks filled the space between us. We talked about school, about Nico's science project, about how the cat had claimed his backpack as a bed. Nothing heavy, just the steady work of being normal. After dinner, Nico lingered while his brother went to the den. "Thank you," he said quietly. "You already thanked me," I told him. "This is different," he said. "I feel safe now." It landed like a small warm stone in my chest. "You are," I said. Later, after they left, I sat at the piano. The room didn't feel like a stage anymore. It felt like home. My fingers found an old tune, one my mother used to hum while making Sunday dinner. Quirky fact: certain melodies live in your muscle memory like they're on permanent lease. Joke 2: no security deposit required. Before bed, I opened my notebook and added a new section: restoration goals. Sunday dinners with the boys twice a month. Finish replacing pantry staples. Lock changes scheduled. Will update it by Tuesday. Then I underlined the last entry I'd written in the crisis section: Valerie arrested. Above it, I wrote in red ink, chapter closed. And just for myself, in small letters at the bottom of the page, chapter chosen. Tuesday morning was all clean skies and crisp air, the kind that makes you believe the world can, in fact, reset itself. I drove to Arthur's office with my updated timeline in my bag and a quiet sense of purpose riding shotgun. Old age wisdom: when you've walked through a storm, signing papers in a calm room feels like an act of rebellion. Arthur had coffee waiting. "Ready to make it official?" he asked. "Ready," I said. We went over the will line by line. Valerie's name vanished from every clause where it had once appeared. In its place were more deliberate choices, specific bequests to Grant and the boys, charitable gifts to the food bank and the community garden, and a contingency plan in case circumstances changed again. "And here's your disinheritance clause," Arthur said, tapping the page. "No one who's convicted of harming you can inherit a dime." I initialed every change, signed my name in the heavy black ink Arthur keeps for big days, and watched as the notary stamped each page. Quirky fact, the embossing on a notary seal is technically called an impression, which is exactly what it leaves on you too. Joke one, some impressions are worth the paper they're on. Afterward, we talked about the possibility of a victim impact statement. It's optional, Arthur said, but it can help the court see the person, not just the paperwork. I told him I'd think about it. Words have weight. I wanted to choose mine like bricks, not feathers. On the drive home, I stopped by the locksmith's. New deadbolts, new keys, and a sturdy mailbox lock to keep curious fingers out. By mid-afternoon, the locks were changed. I held the new key in my palm for a moment before adding it to my ring-cool solid mine. That evening, Grant and the boys came over for dinner. The air was easy laughter, coming without the hesitance it had carried before. Nico helped me set the table, and his younger brother insisted on lighting the candles. Academic debate phrase for the mood restored equilibrium.
After dessert, the boys drifted to the den, and Grant lingered at the table. "You've been incredible through this," he said.
"I've been determined," I corrected. "Incredible is for magicians." I just used what I had and refused to let go.
He nodded eyes steady. "I'm proud of you, Mom." When they left, I sat in the quiet, the candle wick still glowing faintly. I realized the house didn't feel defensive anymore. It felt inhabited. Quirky fact, a home changes temperature when it's holding trust instead of secrets. Joke 2, it's the only thermostat you can't set manually. Before bed, I opened my timeline notebook one last time for the night. Under restoration goals, I checked off 2 more boxes, will updated, locks changed. Then I added a new one planned first meeting for neighborhood safety group. I closed the notebook knowing that after wasn't a cliff I'd fallen from. It was a path I was already walking. And tomorrow, I'd invite others to walk it too. The first meeting of the neighborhood safety group wasn't fancy folding chairs in my living room, a coffee pot on the side table, and a plate of oatmeal cookies cooling in the kitchen. But by 7 p.m., 10 people had shown up, some I knew well, others I'd only waved to in passing. Old age wisdom, you don't have to know everyone's history to stand watch together. I started with my own story, not the whole court-ready version, but the bones of it. Someone I trusted tried to harm me, I said. What stopped it was paying attention to patterns, writing things down, and talking to the right people before it was too late. You could feel the room lean in like they were listening with more than their ears. We talked about small steps, keeping a checklist for medications, noticing changes in bank statements, having a safe person who knows your habits well enough to spot when something's off. Academic debate phrase for the night, preventive vigilance. One neighbor, Mrs. Alvarez, admitted she'd been feeling uneasy about a cousin who'd recently moved in. "He's always offering to handle my mail," she said. I saw heads nod around the room. We made a plan to help her set up a P.O. box. By the end of the night, we had a monthly meeting scheduled, a list of resources, and 3 volunteers willing to take the lead if someone needed quick help. I promised to host the next one in my garden when the weather turned. After everyone left, I washed the mugs by hand, letting the warm water run over my fingers. Quirky fact, the sound of dishes in soapy water is almost the same as rain on a calm night. Joke 1, cheaper than therapy, but about as effective. Weeks turned into months. Valerie's case moved through the system. I didn't attend every hearing, but I made sure my statement was on record. Grant and the boys came for Sunday dinners regularly now, Nico always offering to help with the cooking. The house had found its rhythm, again creaks and sighs that spoke of wood settling, not people scheming. One evening, 6 months after Thanksgiving, I sat at the piano playing the same tune I turned to on the worst nights. This time it sounded lighter, as if the keys themselves remembered that the danger had passed. Before bed, I opened my timeline notebook and wrote the final entry, neighborhood group active. Family safe. House mine in every way that matters.
Then at the very bottom of the page, in the smallest script I could manage, I'm still here. And I keep the key. Quirky fact: some doors lock to keep others out. Some lock to remind you the space inside is yours. Joke 2: either way, you get to choose who knocks. Marlene Quinn's Thanksgiving dinner takes a chilling turn when she receives a mysterious text, "Don't eat anything. Trust me." Acting on instinct, she swaps plates with her daughter-in-law, Valerie's mother, during a toast. Minutes later, the woman collapses. The sender, revealed as Nico Marlene's teenage step-grandson, confesses he overheard Valerie plotting to finish the plan before the end of the year, targeting Marlene's health and inheritance. Marlene begins meticulous documentation, swapping plates. Unusual prescriptions, pantry items she didn't buy, and nanny cam footage provided by Nico showing Valerie tampering with her food. Lab tests confirm harmful substances in samples from Thanksgiving. With evidence in hand, Marlene confronts her son Grant, privately urging him to take the file to police. Detective Morales secures warrants. A search of both homes uncovers more tainted items and financial documents tying Valerie to the motive. Valerie is arrested. In the aftermath, Marlene helps Grant separate his finances, updates her will to include a disinheritance clause, and changes her locks. She restores her home's atmosphere, reconnects with her grandsons, and begins hosting regular Sunday dinners. Determined to prevent similar harm to others, she starts a neighborhood safety group, sharing her experience and offering tools for recognizing early warning signs of coercion and manipulation. The group grows into a monthly gathering where neighbors share concerns and create action plans. Months later, Valerie's case winds through court, while Marlene's home becomes a place of trust again. With her family safe and a community strengthened, she closes her timeline notebook with the affirmation that she has reclaimed not only her house, but her agency. Her final thought is simple and steady: she's still here, and she keeps the key.